What would you do if you found this in a forgotten basement, a book so dangerous it was burned in public squares, because it describes minute by minute what happens to you after your heart stops? It's not life after death, it's a journey. 31 days of transformations that challenge everything you believe. And the scariest part, the same revelations appear in Egyptian tombs, Aztec codices, and alchemical manuscripts. Today, I'm going to show you why this knowledge was censored for centuries and how it can change your life before death arrives. In ancient Egypt, there was talk of the Book of the Dead, with instructions to traverse the underworld and face divine judgments. In Tibet, the Bardo Thodal describes intermediate states of consciousness after death, guiding the soul on its journey. Spiritualists speak of a progressive detachment from the body and ascension through vibrational planes. In some African and indigenous traditions, rituals last exactly 30 or 31 days, a time considered necessary for the soul to adapt and find its path. Coincidence or ancestral knowledge fragmented over time? The manuscript in question, shrouded in mystery, suggests that these 31 days are a universal stage. It doesn't matter the creed, the name of the god, or the doctrine. There is a path the soul follows, marked by distinct phases, from denial to expansion, from pain to liberation. And the way we live here deeply influences how that process unfolds. But why would this book have been hidden? Why would anyone try to prevent this information from coming to light? Perhaps because knowing the afterlife would force us to live more consciously now. Perhaps because understanding death isn't an end, but a powerful beginning. No one knows for sure who wrote the manuscript. What we have are fragments, legends, accounts lost in torn pages of old diaries, and muffled whispers among monks. What is agreed upon among the few who claim to have seen it is this book is not ordinary, the most well-known. Story says that the manuscript was discovered by chance in the 17th century by a group of Benedictine monks restoring an abbey in the mountains of southern France. Inside a hollow wall wrapped in linen cloth and sealed with symbols mixing Greek, Hebrew, and an as yet undeciphered language, was a set of aged pages written in red and black ink. The content frightened the monks. It clearly spoke about the 31 days after death, and a language mixing poetry, ritual instruction, and vivid descriptions of out-of-body experiences. But that's not the only origin story told. Some claim the book was channeled by an English medium in the 19th century during a series of spiritual transances. He said he heard voices coming from the threshold between worlds, dictating step by step what happened to the soul after death. Curiously, the descriptions matched parts of the text found by the monks, despite being separated by centuries and continents. Another theory points to a mythical civilization predating Sumer, which vanished without a trace, except for fragments of wisdom preserved in esoteric orders. It is believed this civilization understood the cycle of life and death as part of an educational process for the soul, and that the 31 days were a kind of final stage of learning before the spirit moved on or returned. But why is it called the Forbidden Book? Not because it contains dark magic or dangerous invocations, but because it reveals what many systems of spiritual control don't want you to know. That the soul is free, that there is choice after death, that consciousness continues, and that what we do now not only builds our destiny in life, but also the path we will have to walk afterward. Some versions of the manuscript were burned, others disappeared in mysterious fires. There are rumors that a complete copy is kept in a vault in the Vatican. What the book teaches echoes through various spiritual traditions and in accounts of people who have been to the other side and returned. What if it's right? If you stay with me, we'll discover day by day what happens after the last breath. Because the next step is day one, the separation from the body. Death doesn't happen in a second. It begins in an instant but unfolds in layers, as if the soul needed to release itself from matter little by little. The first day is marked by one of the most delicate moments of the entire transition, the separation from the physical body. The so-called silver cord mentioned in esoteric traditions, in Ecclesiastes in the Bible, and in near-death experience reports, is the last link connecting the spirit to the body. It pulses, vibrates, resists, and when it breaks, either gently or abruptly depending on the person's energy, the soul, for the first time, sees itself outside its physical form. This moment is often described as a strange liberation. The soul feels immediate relief, the absence of physical pain and of bodily limitations. But there is also confusion. It sees its own motionless body, sees people around crying or trying to revive it, but can no longer interact with them. A brief state of denial is common. The spiritual mind is still tied to the idea of being the body. Many don't realize they've died. They try to speak, scream, touch, but their hands pass through the air. Their cries go unheard. It's a moment of vulnerability. Spiritual accounts say that on this first day, the soul is accompanied by one or more spiritual guides, even if it doesn't perceive them. These guides observe, protect, and often wait silently until the soul calms down. When death was traumatic or sudden, this process can be more tense. There is resistance and fear, but when death occurs with acceptance, as in cases of old age or advanced spiritual practice, the detachment happens with serenity. In practice, this is the day of disconnection. It's when the soul begins to understand that it's free, but doesn't yet know where to go. It's a state of suspension, like being on the threshold between two worlds, one foot still on earth, the other already touching something nameless. Here, the real journey begins. And why does this matter to us, the living? Because what we do in life prepares for this moment. Fears, guilt, and excessive attachment to the body or material possessions make this separation more difficult. A life with more presence, spirituality, and detachment makes everything lighter. If the first day is marked by the separation from the body, days 2 to 4 are dominated by a more subtle but even deeper whirlwind, the awareness that one has died. It seems obvious, but for the newly freed soul, it isn't. At this stage, the soul still carries the memory of matter. It feels alive. It can walk, observe, think, and recall, but something is off. People don't hear it. Animals don't notice it. Words don't come out. The world, once solid, now seems made of mist, and it's at this point that reality starts to sink in. The recognition of death isn't immediate. In many cases, it comes in waves. First a suspicion, then a certainty. The soul realizes it's in what we call the lower astral plane, a kind of energetic copy of the physical world, where emotions still vibrate intensely. In this plane, the soul often remains close to the environments and people it knew in life. It tries to warn loved ones, tries to touch objects, and tries to go back home. Some, in desperation, watch their own funeral. They see their bodies being buried, ears being sealed forever, and feel a pain that is no longer physical, but emotional. Deep. Many do not accept it. They try to reverse the situation. They scream, run, and beg. Others enter a state of numbness, refusing to accept reality. The soul may relive the last moments of life over and over, as if the mind were desperately trying to find a mistake that could be undone. This can last for days or more. But there are those who, even amidst the confusion, begin to notice presences, subtle silhouettes, lights in the background, whispers coming from another dimension. These are the spiritual guides who wait for the right moment to approach, when the soul is ready to listen. During this period, prayers, elevated thoughts, and rituals performed by the living have a great impact. They create bridges of light between the worlds, facilitating the spirit's awakening. That's why so many cultures maintain rites during the first 3 days, not by chance. Between the 5th and 7th day, the soul enters one of the most impactful and transformative moments, the encounter with itself. Nothing external, no judges, no furious gods, or condemning demons. Here, judgment comes from within. This process is described in the manuscript as the vision of reflected truth, more commonly known in many traditions as the life review. The soul relives important scenes, but not in the linear way we remember in life. It feels again everything it caused in itself and in others. Every word spoken in anger, every act of love ignored, every small kindness forgotten, it all comes back, not as memory, but as direct experience. It's as if the soul wears the skin of those it hurt and also of those it helped. It feels the echo of every action, every omission. Time loses shape. Every moment lived resurfaces with overwhelming clarity. This judgment is not meant to punish, it reveals. It is a brutal and liberating way to become aware of what one truly is. The soul sees the patterns it repeated, the fears that guided it, the loves it didn't live out of pride, and the decisions driven by guilt. It also sees the gestures of light, the triumphs, and the moments it chose good, even in silence. It's a mirror that doesn't lie. At this stage, there are two common reactions: self-accusation or acceptance. Some spirits sink into guilt, refusing to move on. Others, even in the face of their mistakes, manage to see everything with compassion, understanding the learning. The difference lies in how the soul lived. The more awareness in life, the more maturity to deal with the truth after death. In certain cases, spiritual beings act as facilitators, helping the soul understand that this judgment is not a condemnation, but a chance for integration, an essential step toward liberation. In practice, this stage has a profound effect. It determines whether the soul will cling to the past or move on to the next phase with more lightness. Reliving mistakes can trap it in dense zones, but forgiveness of self and others allows it to continue the journey toward higher planes. Next comes the most challenging crossing, the threshold. After the inner judgment, the soul is no longer the same. Something within it has broken self-deception, and with that, it finds itself before an invisible portal, a vibrational boundary that separates the world of denser attachments from the journey toward elevation. This moment, known in many spiritual traditions as the threshold, is one of the most delicate and feared points of the post-death journey. The threshold is not a place in the physical sense. It is a vibrational state, an intermediate zone where everything the soul still carries, unresolved, unforgiven, or misunderstood, manifests. Fears take form, guilt becomes incessant echoes, and poorly processed thoughts gain weight. The soul feels in its subtle skin everything it failed to heal in life. The manuscript describes the threshold as a territory of emotional density. It's like crossing a valley made of shadows that are not external, but fragments of the soul itself. Some spirits see labyrinths, others hear voices from the past or face illusions trying to trap them there, memories, addictions, and people who symbolize pain. It is also the point where, according to the text, the presence of spiritual guides begins to intensify. Not as saviors, rather as silent companions. They cannot cross the threshold for the soul. Only the soul can do that. Free will remains the supreme law, even after death. But there is an essential detail. The threshold is not a punishment. It's a passage, a kind of natural purification, like heat dissolving the soul's old layer and preparing it for the next level of consciousness. Those who refuse to cross out of fear, denial, or attachment end up wandering there for an indefinite time, repeating thoughts and reliving traumas. This is what some traditions call trapped spirits. On the other hand, souls that cultivated self-knowledge, meditation, compassion, and forgiveness in life cross the threshold more fluidly, not without pain, but with clarity. They understand that the suffering there is not punishment, but a reflection that can be transmuted. Some cultures symbolize this crossing as a river like the Styx in Greek mythology, or as a bridge, as in the Muslim tradition. The manuscript suggests that each soul perceives the threshold according to its beliefs and experiences. In other words, you create the crossing based on how you lived. The practical takeaway is brutally clear. Don't wait until death to face your shadows. Do it now. Every trauma healed in life is one less stone on the threshold's path. After the intensity of the threshold, the soul begins to pass through a lighter mist. Traces of what was still linger, but now there's something new in the air. Presences subtly familiar, ancient, known. Days 11 to 13 mark a reunion that many traditions describe as sacred, the contact with the ancestors. Spirits from the family lineage, ancient spiritual guides, or souls with whom one shared deep bonds over multiple lifetimes draw near. They don't come to judge, they come to embrace the soul. Still fragile after the crossing, the soul is received with a warmth that words can't explain. It's not just a reunion with grandparents or deceased relatives, it's a vibrational recognition, a frequency from soul to soul, as if the strangeness begins to remember who it is. In some descriptions, the ancestors appear in human form. In others, they manifest as luminous, archetypal, almost symbolic presences. They represent not only the blood family, but also the spiritual lineage, which may include masters, healers, priests, or warriors who were part of the soul's mission in other eras. This part of the journey is also deeply healing. Many souls at this moment are given the chance to reconcile bonds with parents, children, partners from other lives, unspoken truths, interrupted loves, and inherited guilt. All of it may surface, but now in an environment of higher understanding. And there's more. This encounter isn't just emotional, it's directional. The ancestors bring wisdom, they show paths, they point to the next phase. They help the soul understand the spiritual inheritance it carries and what it needs to leave behind. It's here that many souls realize they belong to something greater than their individual story. The book emphasizes that this reunion is only possible when the soul reaches a minimum level of emotional balance and detachment achieved in the previous days. If the soul is still too attached to matter or dominated by guilt from the inner judgment, it may not perceive the ancestors or may mistake them for mental projections. After the embrace of the ancestors, the soul enters a turning point. There is no longer any doubt that it is dead, no more denial. And for the first time, there's enough clarity to make a profound decision where to go now. Days 14 to 16 mark the moment when the soul faces a true choice. But it's not a choice made with words, it's made with vibration. With the sum of everything it carries within, the soul goes in the direction that best matches its current frequency. Three main paths usually appear before the soul: higher planes for souls that have managed to release earthly attachments and expand their consciousness, immediate reincarnation for souls that feel the need to return quickly due to unresolved matters or urgent lessons, and attachment to matter, a state of hesitation where the soul cannot choose and remains close to the physical world, often becoming a wandering or obsessive spirit. This choice, although seemingly spiritual, is also deeply emotional and energetic. The soul may feel, for example, the urge to return to a loved one left behind, the desire to follow the light indicated by its guides, or the fear of letting go of everything. It ends up staying, wandering among the living and feeding on dense sensations. But there's a powerful detail the mysterious book reveals: the soul retains free will even after death. In other words, there is no imposed destiny. There is a resonance. However, the soul can still choose. It can resist, accept, ask for help, surrender to the process, or fight against it. What determines the quality of this choice is the level of consciousness the soul developed in life. If it practiced inner silence, reflected on itself, and had moments of presence and connection with something greater, then this decision is made with more clarity. But if it lived automatically, reactively, and always chasing the external, it may get lost at the most important moment. This moment is the mirror of who we truly are, not the social mask, nor the character we created, but the naked soul. After choosing or hesitating before the choice, the soul doesn't depart immediately. It must revisit the life it left behind. This is the moment of deep emotional detachment, and it happens in what is called the plane of memories. During days 17 to 20, the soul is guided often by its guides or by its own awakened consciousness through places, people, and meaningful experiences that marked its journey on Earth. It visits its former home, silently observes loved ones, sees places from its childhood loves that will not return, and wounds that never fully healed. But here, unlike the inner judgment of days 5 to 7, the experience is not about right or wrong, it's about letting go. The soul sees and feels, but now begins to understand that it no longer belongs to it. It's like walking inside an old dream. Beautiful memories may bring tears, while painful ones may finally be accepted. The soul begins to emotionally disconnect from the earth. In this plane, everything has an almost ethereal quality. The places are not solid, they are like projections made of energy and memory. The soul realizes that much of what it carried with such heaviness was an illusion. Matter conflicts, social fears, titles, money. None of that can be taken. What remains is what was lived with truth. In some descriptions, this stage is compared to a final walk through life, but with new eyes. The soul feels lighter with each released memory and each attachment dissolved. When it can let go of everything honestly, without clinging and without resistance, it begins to feel an indescribable lightness, a silent expansion. It's as if a door within it finally opens to something greater. However, when there are very strong attachments such as young children, obsessive loves, or unresolved feelings, the soul can become stuck in this plane. It revisits the same scenarios repeatedly, trying to interfere, influence, and maintain presence, and this prevents it from moving forward. That's why so many spiritual farewell rituals are performed during this phase to help the soul understand that its time in that life has ended. After the emotional detachment experienced in the plane of memories, the soul begins to experience something entirely new, the expansion of consciousness. Here it enters the realm of consciousness, a dimension where time ceases to exist as we know it, and everything vibrates in pure understanding. During days 21 to 24, the soul no longer revisits what was, it integrates. It's as if all the parts fragmented by pain, fear, ego, illusion, and conditioning begin to come together again. Consciousness stops being a narrative of the self and becomes vision. The soul understands why it lived what it lived, why it suffered, and why it chose certain paths. In this plane, there is no longer an external setting like houses, people, or streets. The environment is purely energetic, shaped by the soul's vibration. It's common for it to perceive itself floating in luminous spaces, connected to subtle presences, sometimes described as beings of light, mentors, archetypal consciousnesses, or even as the divine spark itself. These encounters don't happen through words. Communication is telepathic, direct, silent, and more powerful than any human conversation. The soul feels understood without needing to explain. And above all, it feels accepted. Here, love is not a feeling, it is a state. It's at this point in the journey that many souls remember their original purpose before birth, before choosing that body, that family, that mission. Some are surprised, others recognize with gratitude everything they lived through, even the pain, because it was the pain that awakened dormant layers of the soul. This is the space where the ego finally begins to dissolve. The soul understands it was not the character, it was the actor, and that the stage of life was a lesson, a training, a temporary dive into forgetfulness, so that now, in the realm of consciousness, it could remember who it truly is. After the expansion of the realm of consciousness, the soul begins to feel that it is being led towards something greater, something no longer chosen with words, but with vibration. On days 25 to 27, the journey reaches a point of convergence. The soul prepares to move on to the plane that corresponds exactly to what it has become. This stage is described as an energetic tuning. There is no imposition of a heaven or hell. What exists is the law of resonance. Like attracts like. The soul now vibrates at a specific frequency, built throughout life, intensified in the days after death, and now completely evident. Based on this vibration, the soul begins to be naturally drawn, like iron to a magnet, to one of the compatible spiritual planes. Lower planes, denser, where souls still strongly attached to ego, hatred, and the desire for control or the illusion of matter reside. Middle planes, where evolving spirits continue their learning in spiritual colonies, are healing centers or hubs for study and reconstruction. Higher planes, more subtle realities, where consciousness dissolves into universal love, involve missions of assistance, creation, or preparation for new incarnations with a clear purpose. But the most striking thing is that no one decides this from the outside. This soul itself, in light of everything it lived, places itself where it belongs. And this belonging is not punitive, it is coherent, it is mathematical and spiritual. It feels peace with the vibration it attracts because it is the frequency it built. Beings assist in the direction, but never interfere with the vibrational choice. They merely show gently what is already clear. You are ready for this, or you still need to go through that. In some cases, the soul can still be helped. Rituals performed by family members, sincere prayers, and acts of deep love from the living can raise the soul's vibration in the final moments before its definitive destination. The great lesson here is simple yet immense. You don't go where you want, you go where you are. And what you are is shaped in every daily decision, in every choice between love or fear, in every silent act. Days 28 to 30 are described in the manuscript as the final moments between worlds. The soul already knows where it is going. It feels the plane that calls it, the vibration that surrounds it. But here, on this final shore, there is still time for interference. There is still room for grace, for external spiritual help, for prayers that echo strongly in open cracks in the darkness. This is the moment when prayers, rituals, masses, mantras, and lights lit in the name of the departed have their most powerful impact. At this point, the soul is in a state of semi-vibrational openness. This means it is almost fully aligned with the plane that awaits it, but there is still an active spiritual sensitivity. It still feels the vibration of the living who love it. It can still be touched by gestures of light coming from earth. And this is where the love of the living becomes a bridge. Ancient cultures knew this. In Egypt, candles were kept lit for 30 days. In Catholicism, the 7th day and 30th day masses are not just rituals, they are precise spiritual windows. In Spiritism, this is the period when prayers for the soul are intensified. The last 3 days are crucial in determining the quality of the soul's arrival in the new plane. These days are like the final seconds of a dive, when the light of the surface is visible, but one can still be pulled back into the depths. The final push must be strong. And for us who are still here, the clearest call of all remains: care for those who have departed. Pray. Light candles, say their name, send light. Even if you think it doesn't matter, it does. The soul feels it, vibrates with it, and can be saved, or at least comforted, by your intention. After that, the passage closes, the cycle is complete, and then day 31 arrives. The veil closes, and the soul fully enters the plane. Its vibration has determined it. There is no return. Death is not an end, it is the harvest.